letters that could kill, trumpets said to start wars, and a statue that wiped out entire families. These are even more mysterious museums that contain items too dangerous to display. In the fall of 2001, most people had no reason to think twice about their mail. Letters showed up, you opened them, that was it. So when a few newsrooms started getting odd envelopes with no return addresses, people were a bit confused, but not necessarily worried. It'd be one thing getting a mysterious package with no return address, but what could be wrong with a harmless letter, right? Well, these were not harmless letters. On September 18th, someone mailed 5 letters from a blue postal box in Trenton, New Jersey. They were sent to NBC, CBS, ABC, the New York Post, and the National Enquirer. Inside was a light brown sandy powder. The first sign that something was truly wrong came weeks later. Robert Stevens, a photo editor from the company that owned the Enquirer, got seriously sick and ended up in the hospital. Doctors eventually figured out he had inhalation anthrax, something most Americans had never heard of. The United States Secretary of Health and Human Services at the time, Tommy Thompson, said it was an isolated case and that there was no evidence of it being a politically motivated attack. But then more letters surfaced, including one sent to senators. And one of these letters literally said, "We have this anthrax." When Senate intern Grant Leslie opened one of the letters, the powder burst across her clothes. A lot of people assume the letters were destroyed, but they weren't. After they were decontaminated, the FBI eventually allowed the Smithsonian's National Postal Museum to take a few of them. You can see them now. They weren't sitting in a display case all this time. They've been locked away for years because nobody wanted the public anywhere near them. When Howard Carter cracked open King Tut's tomb in 1922, he found all the gold and jewels, but among the treasure were 2 trumpets, one bronze, one silver. Like everything associated with King Tut, there was a dark legend attached to them. Supposedly, if you played them, war would follow, but it was just folklore, right? In 1939, the BBC decided to broadcast the trumpets over the air live. During rehearsals, the silver one fell and shattered when someone tried to fit a modern mouthpiece on it. Pieces flew everywhere, and Alfred Lucas, one of the original archaeologists, randomly collapsed. On the way to the studio, the broadcast engineer nearly got hit by a runaway horse, of all things, and the power went out just before the show. Instead of calling it off, though, the broadcast went ahead using candles to light the music sheet for the performer. Well, months later, Germany invaded Poland. World War II had begun. In 1967, a museum guard blew the silver trumpet for testing, and the Six-Day War broke out between Israel and its neighbors. In 1990, it was played again, right before the Gulf War, and in 2011, someone sounded one, and the Egyptian Revolution kicked off a week later. Trumpets are currently locked away in the Egyptian Museum. If you ever end up in Sydney, Australia, and you're the type who likes grossing yourself out, I guess, the Museum of Human Disease at the University of New South Wales is the place for you. This place is filled top to bottom with real human organs, preserved lungs, hearts, brains, all of them belonging to people who died of some gnarly disease. You're literally looking at what cancer did to someone's liver, or what a lifetime of smoking does to a set of lungs. Every jar and display has these simple labels that explain what happened, what caused it, and what the doctors found. Not a place for people with sensitive stomachs. In Florence, Italy, there's a natural history museum called La Specola. It's the oldest public science museum in Europe, dating back to 1775. But most people come here for one thing, the anatomical wax models. These are hyper-realistic sculptures of human anatomy, created in the 18th and 19th centuries. Full-sized figures with every muscle, vein, and organ perfectly sculpted in wax. Some are posed like they're sleeping, others cut open to show internal organs. They're beautiful, but deeply unsettling at the same time. These models were created using beeswax mixed with dyes, turpentine, and sometimes gold dust to get the colors just right. The problem is wax is incredibly fragile. It melts. The museum has to keep the temperature very controlled. A power outage in summer could be catastrophic. There's also the question of what else is in these models. Some of the older wax formulas included mercury and other toxic substances. In 1966, a flood damaged a bunch of these pieces, and restorers spent years carefully cleaning and repairing them. The Hope Diamond is one of the most famous, or rather infamous, gems in the world. world. It's this massive 45-carat diamond that's been owned by kings, stolen during the French Revolution, and eventually ended up at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. It's said to be cursed. Legend says anyone who owns or wears it will be met with tragedy. Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette owned it. We all know what happened to them. The diamond was then stolen during the French Revolution and disappeared for 20 years. When it showed back up in England, it passed through several hands, and almost every one of them went bankrupt or faced some kind of awful disaster. One American socialite, Evelyn Walsh McLean, bought it in 1911. Her son died in a car accident. Her daughter overdosed. Her husband left her and died at a mental institution. After she died in 1947, the diamond was found in a shoebox in her bedroom. A jeweler named Harry Winston bought it, and in 1958 mailed it to the Smithsonian. A mail carrier who delivered it got his leg crushed in an accident shortly after, and his house burned down. But since the Smithsonian got the diamond, nothing bad has happened. In fact, the museum's curator said owning it has brought nothing but good luck and helped them build one of the best gem collections in the world. Bisbee's stoop chair looks like any old wooden chair, and it is an old wooden chair, but the story behind it is way heavier than you'd expect. It goes back to 1702 in North Yorkshire, England, when a man named Thomas Bisbee was sentenced to death for killing his father-in-law. The two of them were running a sketchy coin forging operation together, and after a nasty argument, Bisbee snapped and took his life. That part is documented. The part people still argue about is when the curse supposedly started. Some say Bisbee was intoxicated at a pub, sitting in his favorite chair, and shouted that anyone who sat there after him would die. Others say he muttered something similar while being marched to the gallows. Either way, though, his body was hung on display near the inn, and the chair stayed right where it was. And over the years, stories started to spread about it. It seemed like people who sat in that chair ended up dying in accidents. During World War II, for example, Canadian airmen from a nearby base would grab drinks there. People swore that the ones who tried the chair never made it back from their flights. By the 70s, the pub owner had heard enough of these stories, and he didn't want the thing inside his building anymore, so he handed it over to Thirsk Museum. They still have it, but it's not on the floor. I mean, they literally mounted it high up on a wall so nobody can sit in it, even by accident. There's a book at Michigan State University called Shadows from the Walls of Death, and it's even more ominous than it sounds. Published in 1874, it's basically a giant collection of wallpaper samples dyed from arsenic pigments, including the infamous Paris green. Back then, people loved bright, unnatural colors for their walls, but nobody really understood that these pigments were toxic. Touch the pages, inhale the dust, it could make you sick or, even worse, kill you. Originally, there were about 100 copies, but most were destroyed because they were too dangerous to exist. Only 5 survived. The ones that did are treated not just as fragile artifacts, but lethal ones. They used to be locked away completely. Even now, only trained staff can handle them. The pigments on the pages are old, but they still pose a real risk. If they flake, tiny particles could get absorbed through the skin or inhaled. The story of the woman from Lemb statue starts in Cyprus in 1878, when a small limestone figure from around 3500 BCE suddenly appeared. Cyprus has produced hundreds of figurines like this, and the woman from Lemb is shaped like the others, but not quite. The hips are much wider, the details are almost smoothed away, and the legs aren't really defined. It looks like it belongs to the same world, but also like it doesn't fit neatly with anything else archaeologists were finding at the time. What really pushed it into legend, though, were the deaths tied to its owners. The first name attached to it is a man called Lord Elfont, and the story claims he and 7 members of his family died within 6 years of bringing the statue home. After him, it supposedly passed to Ivor Minucci, whose family died within 4 years. Then it went to Lord Thompson Knoll, and the same thing happened. The last private owner was said to be Sir Alan Biverbrook, and after he, his wife, and their daughters died, his sons donated it to the Royal Scottish Museum. Even the curator who handled it reportedly died not long after. The strange part is that when you go looking for these names in real records, they're not there. No official trace of any of them, and the museum doesn't publicly list the statue, but supposedly it is there, maybe locked away too dangerous to display. At the Natural History Museum in London, you'll find the Dalia purple sapphire, a beautiful gemstone with a very dark legacy. In 1857, during the Indian Mutiny, a British soldier named Colonel W. Ferris took a purple sapphire from a temple in Kanpur and brought it back to England. At first, probably thought he'd scored a prized gem, but soon life started going sideways. His finances collapsed, family members fell seriously ill, funeral, and bad luck just seemed to follow him wherever he went. When he lent the stone to a family friend who later took their own life, Ferris started to wonder if the gem was actually cursed. By 1890, the sapphire had landed with Edward Heron Allen, a scientist and writer who didn't believe in superstition, but even he couldn't ignore the odd pattern. A friend he lent it to was hit by a streak of terrible luck, and a singer who wore it claimed she lost her voice. Heron Allen tried to get rid of it, throwing it into a canal, but it was found and returned to him. Eventually, he locked the gem inside 7 boxes lined with charms and sealed it in a bank vault, leaving strict instructions that it shouldn't be opened until long after his death. When he died in 1944, his daughter sent the stone to the Natural History Museum, where it sat until 1972, and that's where curator Peter Tandy finally opened it and found Heron Allen's warning letter inside, ending with a single line: "Throw it into the sea." And the Black Orlov is said to be one of the most cursed diamonds in the world. It was sold to a private owner in 2004, but it's been displayed at several museums, including the American Museum of Natural History in New York and the Natural History Museum in London. Story goes it was originally stolen from a Hindu temple in southern India, where it had been the eye of a Brahma statue. Legend has it a priest caught the thief in the act and cursed the stone on the spot. From that moment, death and disaster supposedly followed anyone who owned it. In the 30s, a New York diamond dealer named J.W. Paris bought the gem to the US to try and sell it. Not long after, he jumped to his death from a Manhattan skyscraper. 2 Russian princesses later owned the diamond, and both ended up taking their own lives within a few years of each other. And that's been the video for today. I will catch you, yes you specifically, in the next one.